hear, feel, think, and listen to episode 3 of A Realm Reborn, a One Piece / Final Fantasy XIV podcast brought to you by Third Impact Anime. I'm Tobias, and today we have something a little bit different. While I am still chugging along in the Alabasta saga of One Piece, Bill completely burned through all the 2.x patches in A Realm Reborn in like a 2-week period. For those of you that know, that expansion ends with a very explosive finale, so Bill and I immediately jumped on a Discord call to talk about it, but we didn't have our usual recording setup ready. I attempted to record the raw Discord audio, and I thought I had it right, but unfortunately the volume levels were completely messed up, making that audio completely unusable. But since there was no way I was not going to let Bill talk about that ending, I had him record a monologue about his thoughts instead. We also did record a discussion about the first half or so of Alabasta, up until the Straw Hats get to the eponymous country. As we had to delay this episode because of the holidays, and because we were doing other work for the main podcast, which you should listen to, we hope to bring you another episode this month to compensate. As discussed previously, we've watched both the 2017 One Piece compilation film, Episode of East Blue, as well as the no-clip documentary on Final Fantasy XIV Online, and we will be discussing those next. In addition, I still need to finish up Alabasta and catch up to Bill, so I look forward to that before we continue into the next arc altogether. As always, feel free to drop us a line via email. Our address is agrandlinereborn@gmail.com. That's all one word. We would love to hear your reactions to our discussion so far, any input you have regarding either or both series, or any suggestions for future episodes as well. I would like to thank the people that have sent us fan mail so far. Bill and I are both loving the ride we're on and are getting a kick out of the fact that other people are enjoying it as well. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, and enjoy this episode.
So, I reached the finale of Final Fantasy XIV post-game. There was a lot of big things that happened. Before we get to the big finale, let's start off with something a bit more fun, which was the final Hildebrand case, at least for this expansion. I thought it was a very fitting finale. There were some fun things, like we finally got to meet Hildebrand's mom, which was really cool. She's as quirky as his dad. We also dealt with Craig, and then you finally got to finish the fight with him. I love that when you beat him, you get his green chicken as a minion, and that's been my default minion ever since, because it's awesome. But I'd say the story, while comical at times, was also very serious, which is kind of surprising. A constant character within the Hildebrand cases has been the reporter Ellie, which her portrayal really bummed me out because Hildebrand's rival had romantic feelings towards her, but he wasn't able to really express those feelings because of her actions. And so it was a bit melancholy seeing her finale, and I could understand the reasons of why she did what she did, but it was still a bummer to see. Although it was hilarious how Hildebrand, because he is partially undead, was able to talk to the zombie horde and basically become friends with them. And of course, the finale is like him launching like a rocket into the sky, which was pretty fun. But I really enjoyed the Hildebrand cases. I love the final rewards you got. And I'm really excited to see where Hildebrand goes, because I know he continues in the other expansions. And I just love him and the humor of him and his cases. They're a lot of fun, and I highly enjoyed them. Okay, so the grand finale, the big soiree dinner, where a lot of stuff goes down. I watched it for a second time with my brother, who has also played the game, and his reactions were amazing. It was akin to when people who watched Game of Thrones saw the Red Wedding for the first time, and they're just really upset at their TV. That's what it was like with my brother. And that was quite, I wouldn't say enjoyable, but that was fun to see his reactions. He did not take it well. But it was a good refresher because a lot of stuff goes down. First, before the Sultan of Ul'dah is going to announce her resignation as the Sultan, she is poisoned, and you, as in your character, and the Signs of the Seventh Dawn are framed for her murder. Because of this, Raban is looked down upon as not doing his job in protecting the Sultanate, and is basically discarded and kind of hinted at that you should no longer have like a seat at the table, and we'll let you handle the funeral arrangements for the Sultan as kind of just salt in the wound to what he's feeling. But basically we learned that this was a grand plan by Teleji in order for the Syndicate and kind of the higher merchant classes to have complete power over Ul'dah. We also learn that the Crystal Bravers, who is Alphino's group, I think it's Alphino's group, was really in league with the Syndicate, including Raban's close friend Ul'dah, where he kind of hammers home, as we've seen in the other post-game stuff, that Alphino is not as smart as he thinks he is, and is very ideal, but doesn't really understand the ways of the world. And again, one thing I loved about this finale, that kind of the post-game stuff hammers home, is, yes, you're the grand hero, and we thank you for what you've done, but we still have other issues going on in our world that we have to deal with, and that we can't just come help you at your beck and call. And also it kind of shatters the illusion that the Crystal Bravers are a people of good intentions. No, it just shows the greed of humanity, for lack of a better word, that if there's good money to be made, people will take that and do what's best for them instead of maybe what's best good for all in the long term. But Raban goes into a rage, kills Teleji for his actions, and then tries to fight Ul'dah and loses an arm. I loved the facial reactions that are in this cutscene, because Teleji has a very Higurashi when they cry face, when he's just taunting them about the actions that he set in motion, and you just see the rage of Raban on his face, like a bull about to go on the offensive. Just really good facial animation there. And because of all these that occur, you as the main character are now in exile, and the Seventh Dawn are now on the run. All the members of the Seventh Dawn kind of get hung up on dealing with the Crystal Bravers, but yeah, the sword bearers that also are working in conjunction, and they're basically held up to allow you to escape. Which it's basically you and Alphino or Alphonse get to escape from Ul'dah and go on forward to the next expansion. But again, I love the kind of political machinations that work here in this grand planning, because in the post-game stuff, we've been given hints of stuff going on in the background that we don't really know, and just the framing of you as the main character and of the Seventh Dawn is expertly done by Teleji, and just kind of was a great, like if this was a TV series, this was a great finale where you just want to go, where's the next season? I want to get to the next season. I can't imagine a player playing through this and then having to wait like a couple weeks or a month before the next expansion. That I would have just been tearing my hair out, just being like, come on, when's it gonna launch? But yeah, I loved the finale. It was just a great piece of theater, and I highly enjoy it, and really excited to see the ramifications in the next expansion. Also, Hank's reactions were great, because he did not take it well. But enough of my ramblings about Hildebrand and his manliness. We gotta get to the other side of the coin, which is One Piece Alabasta saga. Because you've been doing some reading.
I have been. Unfortunately, I haven't finished the entire Alabasta saga. It is a little bit longer than East Blue. And Bill, I applaud your dedication to just chewing through the 2.x patches. I did not expect you to finish that quickly. I know that for most people, it's a bit of a slog, and a lot of people take their time and slog through, but you ate that within like a week.
I have a problem. That's the real answers. I have a problem when it comes to my content, is that I just eat it up and say, give me more.
Well, I'm chewing through at a reasonable pace. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to read this as fast as I did East Blue. Just I've had the end of the quarter, work's been a little wild. I've had a lot of other things I've been doing, such as the aforementioned beating Stormblood. So a lot of things on my plate currently, so I haven't finished. Of course, I'm going to continue. Don't think otherwise. But where I'm at currently, well, we can talk pretty much up to the Alabasta, the part where they get to Alabasta, which is honestly a sizable chunk of story in and of itself.
So the big thing I was excited for you to do is to get to Drum Island and meet Chopper. What did you think of Drum Island?
It's interesting because up to that point, when we start Alabasta Saga, they get into the Grand Line, which initially I was thinking that, oh, this is the end of the story. Isn't the One Piece on the Grand Line? Why, if they're already there, well, that's it. This is it, the One Piece. But no, it turns out the Grand Line is huge.
It is a huge body of water and piece of the continent. Yes.
And what makes it seem even larger is how chaotic the Grand Line is. They say that because it's pretty much the equator of the planet they're on, I believe, and that means that there's a lot of weird weather patterns, and like magnetic forces don't let traditional compasses work the way you would think they work. So you have to have this made-up anime plot device. What are they called? The little wrist compasses?
Yeah, the log pose. That's it.
I looked it up. I was like, what the hell is a log pose? And it turns out it's just a fictional little piece of kit that's made up just for One Piece. It doesn't actually exist. So that's the sort of the lead up into why pretty much Oda telling us, hey, this is going to take a lot longer than just, going straight to the One Piece. So we start off there. We go to Whiskey Peak, where we by that point we've met a few members of Baroque Works, this seemingly international group of supervillains, like secret agent, that are causing mischief. And so they have led the Straw Hats, like they do all the pirates, onto Whiskey Peak to rob them, take their gold and resources. But it turns out everything completely flips, like is turned on its face, because one of the Baroque Works agents, actually two of the Baroque Works agents, are actually double agents. We have Princess Vivi and Eorzea, right? Her butler.
We're in the anime, he just likes to sing a lot. La, la, la.
In the manga, they translated him just like doing, me, trying to like clear his throat.
Mm-hmm. So. Don't forget her awesome not chocobo pet, Kuroko. I think it's
Karu.
Karu. Yeah.
Yeah, Karu. Yeah, so they go to Whiskey Peak. It's run by Baroque Works, this super villain organization. It turns out that Vivi and Eorzea are double agents. They actually come from the Kingdom of Alabasta that has been taken over, if maybe just in name more so than actuality, but there are machinations going on in Alabasta being perpetrated by Baroque Works, and Vivi and Eorzea are trying to win their kingdom back. At that point, they pick Vivi up. Unfortunately, Eorzea sacrifices himself to save them, to allow them to escape. And now the Straw Hats have another crew member, perhaps a temporary crew member, in Vivi and Karu. All right, so on the way to on the way to Alabasta, they go to a number of other islands. They go to, what's the first one? Little Jungle? Little Garden is the first one, where it is a prehistoric island where two giants have taken up residence.
Yes, they play a prominence within One Piece lore. I don't want to spoil it, but they play a prominence in One Piece lore later. Not something like in your face, but it's like a fun little nugget in the background.
That is interesting, because I kind of figured these would be a one-off arc, not unlike Captain Kuro.
Well, I'll say this, I don't think this is a big spoiler. We don't see them again, like in present story, but they're prominent names later.
Interesting. Okay, well, I'll watch out for them at that point. But they show up. It turns out these two giants have been fighting each other for some forgotten slight. They're both fighting for their honor. They don't really know exactly what. We have a couple of members of Baroque Works show up to, in the process of hunting the Straw Hats. Didn't get involved in the fight. We introduced to Mr. 3, who has wax powers.
His one of my favorite One Piece characters of all time, Kendra Locke. He's so sophisticated. I wish I could be as sophisticated as Mr. 3, with his amazing hair that is not on fire. Nope. But yeah, he's a character that that in terms of like smaller characters, I've adopted and just said, you and me, best friends. Don't care. He's great.
I do like that all the Baroque Works characters, they become some of my favorite villains because of how goofy their designs are. They all of the men have code names based on numbers, and all of the women have code names based on holidays or days of the week. They all have really fun costumes and fun powers. So yeah, number 3 has the ability to create wax and mold wax in certain powers. So one of his big things in Little Garden is trapping half of our crew into wax statues. It's kind of a fun timer built into the story. Well, eventually they get out of that. They defeat Mr. 3. and what is it? Is it Golden Week? Miss Golden Week with the colors trap power. To continue on, the next stop is Drum Island, which is what you mentioned. And yeah, so far, the first saga's been about them building up their crew. They've got the navigator, they've got a cook, they've got like a bodyguard. Now they need a doctor because as soon as they get out of Little Garden, Nami gets sick, really badly sick. Really badly sick, and they have no clue what's going on. She's got a fever. She's trying to deny it, but it's obvious that she's not doing too well. So they eventually come across another goofy pirate crew in the middle of the water. At this point, I think it's like an ice area. See, another thing about the Grand Line is that not only does it like destroy compasses, it also has a lot of weird weather patterns. Like, so we see all 4 seasons happen very, very close to each other. So it's almost like Oda's saying, I don't really know what I want to do here, but I want to have a lot of different environments, so let's just hand wave it away.
It's a plot device, so that way he can do whatever world he's interested in doing at that point. Which, hey, I think that's great, because then you're not constrained by your own lore into, like, we must only do this type of island or this type of environment.
I say it pays off. I mean, this One Piece is very much a cartoony type of series, so it didn't like break my immersion or anything. But I agree that it lets them do a lot of different stuff, because as they defeat this first pirate crew, Wapol's gang, they move on to Drum Island, which is just full of snow, completely covered in snow. And because they're on an island full of snow, their reindeer are present. And one of the reindeer doesn't have a red nose. He has a blue nose. And this is Tony Chopper.
And he's a unique character in that he was an animal that at one point while traveling around the area of the island ate a gum fruit, or a devil fruit, that allowed him to be able to talk, and made him more than just your average reindeer. He's not a raccoon, he's a reindeer.
He is a reindeer that doesn't look like a reindeer. Well, when you first meet him, he is reindeer shaped, to be fair. But we mostly see him in this little scrawny, like you say, a raccoon. Oh, he looks like a little tanuki, maybe, with a hat. He's eating the what was it? The devil fruit, the people fruit, is it? Where he gets to turn into a people.
Mm-hmm.
Not only can he turn into like a furry, basically a fursona, he can change it to a couple different phases in between, like an actual reindeer form and a big buff human form. But Chopper is he's very different than the other characters we met so far. So we have, Luffy, he's very headstrong. Zoro is just, a big tough swordsman. Sanji is just kind of he's got a potty mouth and he's just really tough. And we've seen like their stories before, but Chopper is kind of a coward in a way that's a little different than Usopp.
He's very uncomfortable around, from what I remember, he's very uncomfortable around strangers. Like when he first meets Nami in Dr. Kuro's house, where he is just completely afraid of interacting with Nami, even though Nami's not going to do anything. And he's very shy. And it kind of makes sense because in his backstory, he's lived a very sheltered, kind of isolated life, where he's not had a lot of interactions with others.
Yeah, I think shy is a better way to put it, for sure. Usopp's more of a coward, more of a scaredy cat that way. Chopper he's very apprehensive of people, because they've all called him monsters in the past. He was never accepted among the reindeer. They used to laugh and call him names. Haha. He was never able to get really along with humans. They just called him a monster and ran him off. It was only the doctor that he met. Dr. Heerlook was the one in his backstory.
And basically, like, the doctor, they kind of gave him like a sense of grounding and a bit of a family, because without the doctor, like, he would just be all alone, and that's where he gets his love or interest in learning medicine, is through the good doctor.
Exactly, because the doctor here, look, is trying to like create a cure-all, a cure that works for everybody. Like, his big backstory is that he's not actually a doctor. He just likes experimenting, mixing potions and concoctions that really end up making people sick, more so than curing them. But he keeps trying. He's sure that he's got a tonic that can cure everybody. And so he instills this, this positive energy, this optimism into Chopper, which is ironic because the other people of the island don't like either of them. They sort of keep them at a distance and chase them off whenever they're around.
It's hammering home the other common theme within One Piece is just the misfit mentality that a lot of One Piece characters have.
And in this case, it's a little earned, because we as we stay on Drum Island and we meet a lot of the people there, we see that it has a history. We learn that the previous king of Drum Island was Wapol, the pirate captain we saw right before the arc. He also ate a gum fruit. Sorry. We keep calling it gum fruit, but that's the one that Luffy has. It's not everybody's. He ate another devil fruit. I don't know what it's called, but it allows him to eat anything and store it into his body. Again,
Wario.
He does kind of look like Wario. He's got that he's very broad. He's got like this really mean looking evil face. He's got facial hair. He's got a little mustache. You could see Wapol saying wah.
But if I remember correctly, like, he had left the island to become a pirate, and then gets like trounced by Luffy, and then goes back to the island and just basically says, "I'm the ruler again."
Right. So like the big contention is that he has like a monopoly on all the doctors of the island. He's kidnapped and taken all the doctors with him. So all that's left is Dr. Kureha, which is like the person that the most connected with Herelook, even though she didn't really like him either. But when Herelook ends up, we get the resolution there. He ends up leaving. We see she takes in Chopper, and because she's the only doctor on the island, she's able to charge extravagant prices for any services. And she's actually taken up residence on Wapol's castle on the highest peak of Drum Island.
Yeah, and she's basically the opposite of Herelook, where she's all about the money, and she's not a very warm person. She's, if I remember correctly, like, she can be very bossy and wants things done her way.
Yeah, it's hard to really dislike her, like in the sense of being a villain, because even though she is kind of a jerk to the people of the island, I get the impression that she's just been burned too many times with everything that happened with Wapol. It really feels like she's just trying to make a living, even if it requires, pissing people off.
And I think she also teaches Chopper more about the ways of medicine too. Like, he basically becomes an assistant to her, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, in fact, we first see him. She's riding her out on a sleigh, being led by Chopper in his actual reindeer form. So it was kind of funny to see him at first, not in his iconic little cartoony little runt form, but looking like a full reindeer, in a form that's not completely in a form that is reminiscent of Santa. I think there's even a panel or two where it shows them flying against the moon or something. It looks a lot like Santa Claus. All right, well, as the Straw Hats are wont to do, with all this stuff sort of comes to a head, and it's shown that Wapol is trying to take over the island and keep everybody under his boot. Luffy steps in and saves the day. We see he inspires Chopper to sort of rise up and protect the people in his on his island, even though he's been kind of abused by them throughout his life. We see a lot of cool forms that Chopper can go through with his power.
There's one form that he does not do because he's afraid of losing control. Did that come up?
You know, it's been a minute since I read that part. There were a lot of different forms he went through. A lot of that focuses on like him enhancing parts of his body at one at a time.
Yeah, where he uses a ball or he uses something to get to transform into these different types of body transformation. And like with Nami, Chopper also has a bit of a tragic backstory as well, where he accidentally poisons his mentor, killing him. Just the heartbreak of that. I remember being very emotional over that and getting at one point very weepy because you accidentally hurt someone that you really love and that gave you some form of shelter, gave you a bit of a purpose of what you want to do in your life. So that was really tragic, and just the ideal of the Doctor is really instilled into Chopper.
Right. So here Luke himself, he wasn't good at what he was doing. He was very much, trying to inspire the people around him. The power of positive thinking, really. And by taking in Chopper and trying to raise him as a Doctor, I think he really wanted him to surpass him in reality. And he knew that by encouraging Chopper, I think looking at it now, it looks like he ate a poisonous mushroom that Chopper brought him, thinking it was going to be medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he knew that at that point that he knew that his time was up. He knew that he had accomplished really all he could accomplish, in all honesty. So to pass that, on to his adoptive son, as it were, he needed to continue down that path, sacrifice himself. And ultimately, that's what happens. We see the big showdown at the top of the castle when it all was revealed, and Chopper sort of backs away from running away. He loses his cowardice and decides to fight. And we see the big scene where Luffy's like at the top of the castle parapet holding that flag, the Jolly Roger with the sakura petals on the background.
It's the symbol of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm. As we see Wapol bombard him with a couple cannonballs, but he's still standing, showing this is what being a pirate means. It's not necessarily, in Luffy's eyes, it's not necessarily about just like going around the seas and pillaging and whatnot. It's about carving your own freedom out and deciding to live your life as you want it. Which, it's a very One Piece ending. I'll say that. Okay, well, eventually they do defeat Wapol, yet another supervillain, and another notch in Luffy's straw hat. We'll put it that way. They've cured Nami. Dr. Kureha has identified that the sickness that she's had was almost fatal. She would have died had they not got there. Convenient plotting, if I do say so myself. But she's magically cured. We know that Chopper has now been inspired to himself be a pirate, even though he doesn't know entirely what that means, in all honesty, and decides to join the Straw Hats as their doctor.
Now, I should add it before we move on to Alabasta proper. What do you think of the kind of the fan casting and the suggestions that Jamie Lee Curtis play the role of the Doctor?
I can see that, in all honesty. She would need I think Dr. Kreha has a big nose or a big chin. She looks like a witch, and I think now that I'm looking back on it, she's called a witch in the text directly. She would need some makeup to really get that effect come across, but she could totally do it. Absolutely.
I think that would be really cool. I know it's kind of fan casting, but I think that would be a really cool touch, and because it wouldn't require a lot of episodes, I think she could easily do it. It wouldn't be a huge time commitment, like being a Straw Hat crew member. So I think that would be pretty cool. And her son is into One Piece, so maybe she would do it for her son. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, we kind of briefly touched upon it before, but if they get to this part, if Netflix does not cancel the One Piece show, then that'll be this is like season 2 territory for sure.
Yeah, most likely.
It could still happen. We can still see it.
Who knows with the Netflix black box?
Anything could happen at this point. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they do. Not only Dr. Kreha, but how they decide to do Chopper. Is Chopper going to be a CG monstrosity, or are they going to try to cast him as a real life person?
Yeah, that'll be tricky because that CG is not going to be probably cheap. I would rather have someone in they'd have to make some adjustments, but I would prefer something with prosthetics and makeup instead. Mm-hmm. But we'll see, and I'm also curious what they're gonna be if it does continue beyond into post time skip era, which I'm doubtful, but you never know. Chopper's character design does change, where it feels like the One Piece editors basically said to Oda, "We like Chopper, but we need him to be more cutesy, so that way we can sell things. Can you make him more cuter?" Because in his original character design, he's very kind of grungy and not very cutable. But in his post-skip character design, he's very much like a cutesy doll in a way. So who knows how they would design him. I would imagine it'd be more like a cutesy doll in the Netflix version, but I would prefer they kind of stick with how he originally looks and then do a lot of prosthetics and makeup effects than CGI, because something long term, I think CGI would be a bit of a pain in the butt to do. Yeah.
One of the gags I like that they bring back a couple times is Chopper doesn't know how to hide. Whenever he tries to hide, you don't really think of hiding your body behind a wall and peeking over the edge. He does the opposite. He puts his body in the doorway and sort of puts his head behind the wall. It's something that's come up even later in the Alabasta part, Alabasta arc proper, and he's really bad at hiding, and it's kind of funny. Okay, well, eventually they do that. They solve the Wapol puzzle. They get a doctor for the road and move on and finally reach their goal of Alabasta, the Kingdom of Alabasta, where Vivi's hometown, and we get a bunch of story that follows when they get there. Let's see. So we find out what even happens in that order. I'm trying to think now, because where I'm at currently, I'm currently where they're about to get to Alubarna, where the big battle is about to happen between everybody.
I think we should say to our listeners that because of how vast One Piece is, we're never going to get everything exactly in order. So if we forget something that you think we should have mentioned, maybe that could be something to bring up in an email.
It's true.
And to jog our memories, because Tobias is taking in a lot of information when reading One Piece, and I'm having to stretch back somewhat from in my memory when I watched One Piece. So
we'll leave it at this. When they get to Alabasta, they go to the port city of Nanohana, and when they get there, or when they are approaching there, we meet another member of Baroque Works, Mr. Tu Bon Clay.
Yeah, he's fun.
He initially shows up as a friend. They find him on the open seas. They hang out for a bit. They just talk without bringing up who they are to each other, and only find out later that they're actually enemies.
And I love when they first meet, like, he just shows off his devil fruit power, no problem. Like, yeah, I can imitate and look like anybody of my choosing. Where he makes himself look like Nami, makes himself look like Zoro, makes himself look like Sanji. And they're all just going, oh, that's really cool.
They all are perfectly happy. It's kind of funny how you see the characters in this show, in this manga. They all would be happy just to hang out with each other, except their forces at work. They dictate what sides they're on. In
terms of characters, did you meet, I don't know if you talked about him, or if we've talked about him in other episodes, but did you meet Smoker?
Yeah, and he just showed up again. So in Rogue Town, they meet Captain Smoker. He's captain, I believe, right?
Yeah, he is a captain.
Yeah, so he's a captain in the Navy. He's not a pirate captain, but he's part of the Navy.
Marines. It's Marines.
Oh, the Marines. Okay, are the Marines different than the Navy? Is what you're telling me?
No, it's just the way they just called them the Marines in One Piece.
Okay,
not the Navy.
Gotcha. Okay, so Captain Smoker is of the Marines, who, as we've talked about before, are supposed to be the good guys. Supposed to be. Not always. It feels like the whole organization is like a corrupt police, where you've got some good apples, like Captain Smoker is generally a good one, but it's kind of hard to get stuff done when so many of the bad ones are above you,
And he's frustrated by the red tape of the Marines, and I don't think this is a big spoiler, but he's frustrated in having to deal with all the hoops as a Marine in his position of power that he has to deal with.
And it feels like, just like the police in real life, it feels like that. It feels a lot like that red tape is kind of meant to hold people back, and prevent change from happening.
And also, his assistant, who I'm forgetting her name because I'm bad.
Tashigi.
Thank you. Tashigi we're given hints, but it's not confirmed. It's a possibility maybe that she is Zoro's childhood friend, but we don't know that.
Yeah, she looks like Zoro's friend, but I could have swore that she died, right? In the backstory.
We're told that.
We're told, okay, Bill. I see what you're putting down here. But no, you're right. They mentioned when we see Tashigi in Rogue Town, she's trying to buy the swords, or she's in the sword shop at the same time as Zoro is, and they start talking about the histories of certain swords that they have, and so you're meant to like her as a character, in the same way that I think you're meant to like Captain Smoker, even though he is one of the antagonists against the Straw Hats.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all this comes down to what you were leading into, which we see Smoker shows up in the port city of Nanohana. Our Straw Hats get there. They are hungry after being out of the open sea. They go to the nearest pub. They start drinking and eating. And then Captain Smoker sits right down next to them. And they run away in a very comedic, goofy fashion. But it turns out that another person is there. Ace.
Yeah, you finally met Ace.
And
Luffy's brother.
Luffy's brother, right. Which I think is what confused me when I first got into One Piece. Is he and Shanks from the very first chapter. They all three of these characters, Ace, Luffy, and Shanks, look kind of similar to each other. In a way, they could all be brothers or relatives. But if I'm remembering, Shanks isn't actually related to them. He just has the straw hat, right?
Yeah, Shanks is not related to Luffy and not related to Ace.
Okay. Well, we see Ace, Luffy's brother, who also has a hat, even though I don't think it's a straw hat exactly. Not that
no,
I'm
it's like it's like a hat. It's like a something you probably wear at the beach, and he has like a happy face, and then like an angry face and a sad face. If I remember correctly.
Right.
It's a kind of very unique hat, and his I'm trying to remember if they revealed his power, but his power is he has the control of fire.
Yes, because everyone in this show has eaten a devil fruit. This thing that's supposed to be rare, it's supposed to be unique that Luffy has. Every other character is eating a devil fruit, which is, I feel like I keep saying this.
just wave that away. Just ignore that.
I feel like yeah, at this point, that's just everyone has eaten a fruit.
It's view it the same way as people view JoJo, where in JoJo, everyone in JoJo has a stand.
That's fair. Everyone has this as a stand or power. Yeah, so they're in the port city. They meet not only Captain Smoker, they meet Ace, who's also a pirate, who's working with... Is he working with Crocodile? Or is it a different one?
No, he does not work with Crocodile.
Okay, he's connected to somebody up the chain. I think one of Crocodile's...
He's connected. I don't want to spoil it because I don't know if they mentioned it, but he works for a very prominent pirate group.
I remember them talking about that. He doesn't stay on that much. He pretty much gets the hell out of Dodge. I think Brokeworks is coming into town to chase them, and he ends up smoking half their horses.
Yeah, where he basically meets the crew, and Luffy is doing something else, if I remember correctly. And
he sees Luffy by the end. By the end, he does meet up with his brother.
Okay, but at least in the beginning, he's just talking to the Straw Hat crew, and is basically like, "Man, I didn't know if anybody else could put up with my brother. So thanks for putting up with him."
And from then on, our group travels to the other side of the kingdom, which is the on the other side of the river, I guess, is Sandora. And we'll leave it at that because then things ramp up. By this point, we're aware that the Baroque Works leader, Crocodile, he's also one of the 7 warlords. They're one of the big players that we've kind of been hinted at previously in the work. We know that he's also leading this secret agent group. Mm-hmm.
Did they explain what the 7 warlords is?
I mean, it kind of felt like a traditional shonen thing. There's 7 big pirates.
I can tell you what the warlords are. I don't think that's a huge spoiler. The 7 warlords are 7 very powerful pirates that work for the Marines. And basically, these 7 warlords can be called upon by the Marines for any reason what they choose. In the trade-off for them becoming warlords is that the Marines will leave them alone and they won't be arrested or harangued by the Marines or by the Marine admirals. So basically they're kind of given, as long as they perform duties when called upon by the Marines, they are allowed to basically do whatever they want. And Crocodile is the first warlord we meet. Actually,
well, technically the second, because we meet Mihawk.
Yeah, sorry. He's the second warlord we meet, because the first one is Mihawk.
Yeah, it really hints it. I don't think it flat out says it, but the way they show it in the panel, we see the silhouettes for the 7 warlords in a very, an anime tropey fashion. And Mihawk is absolutely one of those silhouettes we see. But the crocodile is the first one we actually, for real, get to fight. I'm sure we'll fight all of them as the story progresses. I'm sure that's going to happen. A crocodile is the first one.
Maybe.
And, what does that mean, Bill? You've got me worried.
You'll find out.
I'll just have to read the manga. Okay,
have
well,
to read.
And pretty much what you said is true here. Like, Crocodile, the whole gist is he's got Project Utopia, where he is more or less going to conquer Alabasta, take it over from the existing king and Princess Vivi, by pretty much making them fight each other and causing a civil war, which allows him to pick up the pieces.
Sorry, and the last thing is, I think like he's an advisor to the king of Alabasta.
Yeah, he's generally considered a good guy to the people. Like, he runs this casino, crocodile dinners or something like that.
Yeah, where like his public image is like, no, he's a hero of Alabasta and he works with the king, and like he's one of the good guys.
Yes, he's one of the good billionaires. one of the good ones, at least publicly. But we know that behind the scenes, he's been running Baroque works and funding them and plotting them doing a coup d'etat. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there, because the rest of it is all kind of leading up to the big Alabasta arc. You know, there's like the desert we go through, there's Rain Base, and the big final battle, which I haven't quite gotten to yet. So there's still a lot of story.
As we wrap up, I'm curious, like, you're now in your like real long arc in One Piece, and some people, I think that can be a turnoff to some people, and some people get really engaged with them. And so I'm curious, I know you haven't finished it, but how are you feeling about kind of this longer story that you're dealing with? Because this is very common in One Piece, where the days of a short story are kind of over. You're now in these long arcs.
You really have to reconfigure your brain when reading these parts, for sure. You know, they're not just cut and dry like the Buggy arc was, not like Captain Crow. There's not just singular stories that you're done with. And I think that now that we've done a lot of setup, now that we've got our basic pirate crew with Chopper, I know that more people show up later, but I feel like that's going to be spaced out a little more. Really, the focus is going to be on Alabasta, this big civil war. So it's almost like, rather than reading One Piece, a story about a pirate crew, we're reading One Piece, Lawrence of Arabia. It's like a particular... it's almost like you're reading a separate series than Arlong Park. Sure, you have the same principles. You've got Luffy, you've got, Usopp, and you've got all these characters that feel like they're the same characters. But you're not stuck on a boat like you have been in the past. You're not skipping from island to island, which is its own little theme park, fighting the Disney villain of that little area. We're getting into a big story here, and the way that Alabasta has unfolded, it's not like Crocodile is just like Arlong 2.0. He's not just taken over because of the strength of, his inherent strength. He's taken over on a social level. He's convinced the people and manipulated the people around him to do this. So there's more nuance there than we see with Buggy. Like all the people before that were just one-note villains. There's a lot going on here. And I don't really have much of a doubt that at the end of the day, Luffy's going to win. That's just because that's what he do. There's a reason One Piece runs along, like 1,000+ chapters. It's because Luffy keeps winning. But I'm interested to see what happens. Not only how he wins, but how he ties off this part. Because there's a lot of things going on. There's the rebel group that we will see later. There's the loyalist, people loyal to the king. And you have Baroque Works, which still has a lot of agents under their belt. And they could turn violent if the situation required. So I feel like it's kind of earned for it to be long.
So many sub-bosses, so little time.
So little time indeed. I wish I had more of it, otherwise I'd be into the next arc by now. But no, I'm really digging it. I like it's more satisfying than East Blue in that regard. I'll say. I really liked, of course, our long park because it tied off one of our characters and really it really paid off all the stuff we'd built on Nami so far. And I'm sure Alabasta will do the same. We just have to get through a lot more meat to get there. Mm-hmm. Which unfortunately means that it's taking me longer to get through it because there's so much meat there, but it's good meat. Good soup.
Good soup.
Well, I think that's going to do it today on our recap of both 2.x ARR and the first half of the Alabasta saga with One Piece. Bill, any closing thoughts?
Just excited as you're experiencing more One Piece lore. I'm really excited to find out the aftermath of 2.x and what happens in Heaven's Ward. So just generally just super excited.
You know what I'm excited for, Bill?
What?
I'm excited to hear what people have to say in our email inbox. Again, you can reach out to us at agrandlinereborn@gmail.com. By all means, send us email. We love to hear from other people. If you have any anecdotes about playing 14 through the first section of A Realm Reborn or reading One Piece, we would love to hear it. And any other comparisons you have between the two, like Flu had on our last episode, feel free to drop us a line there. But if you want to hit us up on social media, maybe email's a little too, how should I say?
Cumbersome?
Email's a little too daunting, or maybe a little too outdated in the year of our Lord 2022. You can hit us up on Twitter. Bill, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at WB Foreman 999 on the Twitter, where I mostly tweet about One Piece, movies I'm watching, and all my other media that I consume.
Well, Bill, it sounds like Twitter is maybe being taken over right now by Crocodile, so we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see a great big battle of Twitter Basta takes off.
You know, unlike Crocodile, who is a grand strategist, this grand takeover, I don't know if it's going to go too well. So, potentially, listeners, there might be a time skip where we go to a new social media island/land. But for now, we're still in the Twitter.
Yep, and I'm still on Drum Island on my Twitter account at Reverend_Tobias. Well, Bill, as we always say, till sea swallows all, set sail for One Piece.
Yahoo!